Man, the moment this season kicked off, everybody figured the offense would glide like it always did. Because almost the entire unit came back. You look around and see the receivers, the backfield, the line, all the familiar faces line up again. And it creates that expectation that everything should fall right into place without much adjustment. But once the game started rolling, it became clear that one change carried way more weight than most people wanted to admit. During the offseason, the shift in offensive play calling hit harder than many expected. I remember saying over and over that replacing the person who handled the passing game with the same person who struggled to elevate it last year felt backwards. And folks thought it was unnecessary criticism, but here we are, watching the results play out on the field and realizing the impact was bigger than anyone wanted to acknowledge. At least the defense stepped up in a way that reminded everybody what a real contender looks like. Holding Detroit to single digits is no joke, especially when that squad normally puts up around 36 points without blinking. That kind of shutdown tells you the heart of this team still beats on the defensive side. And what they did becomes even more impressive when you consider how brutal the weather was. The wind was tossing the ball around like it had a mind of its own. Anyone standing outside that afternoon felt it cutting through the city, so when both quarterbacks kept missing easy throws, it was not just nerves or bad mechanics. It was that gust ripping across the field, knocking passes off course like swatting flies. Still, the defense did something special. The line came alive in a way we had been waiting for since the early weeks. Back then everybody kept wondering where the pressure would come from because the edge rushers were quiet. The younger guys were struggling to find their rhythm, and only the interior felt steady. But after that mid-season move brought in that electric spark off the edge, everything shifted. That new energy lit up the whole line. Suddenly the pocket was collapsing. The quarterback looked rattled, and you could feel the confidence surging through the defense. Sacks, tipped passes, constant pressure, bodies flying all over the place. It felt like the group rediscovered who they were supposed to be. Even the guys who had been inconsistent earlier began feeding off that momentum. And when the interior started batting down passes like they were playing volleyball, Detroit's offense looked completely lost. You could see their quarterback rushing throws, dropping his eyes, sending balls into the dirt, and overcompensating when he tried to force something deep. Their whole operation depended on rhythm, and the defense refused to let them establish even a little bit of it, and that becomes important. If this team manages to hang on to that first seed, no squad from a warm environment or a dome wants to step into this city in the middle of January, face that wind, feel that cold, and deal with a defensive front hitting like that. You think Los Angeles wants to come here? Tampa, Detroit again? None of them want that smoke. That is why every win matters. Because that home field advantage becomes a whole different type of pressure cooker. But as much as the defense kept things under control, the offense tested everyone's patience once again. It is wild how hard it is to watch a group packed with so much talent struggle to put together consistent drives. It becomes even more painful when the defense keeps gifting them short fields. Stopping Detroit on fourth down over and over should have broken the game wide open. But instead the offense wandered around, wasted opportunities, and left points out there like loose change. And it is not just one issue. The receivers who normally look automatic suddenly dropping passes they could catch in their sleep. Routes being run half-heartedly, moments where you expect fireworks and instead get frustration. The quarterback dealing with the wind is fair, but missing a wide-open target in broad daylight still stings because those are chances you just cannot throw away. And then there is the play calling, which feels like watching the same script loop over and over. Predictable routes, predictable timing, predictable tempo. Defenses are not guessing anymore. They know exactly what is coming before the ball is snapped, and when the offensive line has an off day, everything snowballs, even with injuries. They have to protect better than that. If the whole approach is going to be conservative, then the basics have to hold up: the protection, the timing, the execution. Otherwise, you have a roster stacked with weapons, but you are using it like some basic setup that barely scratches the surface of what the group could be. It gets to the point where you start looking at contracts and wondering why the team is paying premium prices for an offense that feels watered down. If the goal is to play slow, grind out games, and let the defense carry the weight, then why throw so much money at skilled players who barely get used the way they should? You might as well load up the defensive payroll instead, because that side of the ball is the one keeping the team atop the conference. And honestly, A lot of those defenders deserve real long-term investments. They are out there dominating snaps, changing games, breaking up passes, blowing up protections, doing everything you want from elite defenders, watching the way they move, the way they read plays, the way they force offenses into mistakes. It is clear several of them are building strong cases for major extensions when you see them chasing down runners, punching out passes, or blowing up fourth down attempts. You start thinking the front office needs to prioritize keeping that core together for years to come. Even some of the defensive backs who have been inconsistent at times showed up in huge ways. Limiting Detroit's top player to barely any production is not easy, and it takes discipline and tight coverage to pull it off. Sure, there was one big mistake on a crossing route, but that same route has burned a lot of defensive backs across the league. The overall performance still showed grit, awareness, and the kind of determination that turns close games into wins. The only real frustration comes back to the same issue, the offense wasting chance after chance, while the defense created those chances in the first place. When you get that many short fields handed to you and all you walk away with is a handful of points, something is deeply off with the rhythm of the unit. The opponent kept going for it on fourth down because they did not respect the offensive threat. They were practically daring them to capitalize, and even then the output stayed flat. And that is what makes the win feel strange. You walk away relieved because staying in that top spot is huge. But you also walk away annoyed because this game should have been over long before the fourth quarter. This team could have run away with it. But instead the offense kept letting the door stay cracked open. It creates this mix of excitement and irritation where you know the team is good enough to dominate, yet somehow keep settling for the bare minimum on one side of the ball. Man, thinking about everything that unfolded, you start to realize how much this team is living on the edge, because one side of the ball is carrying double the weight, and it is wild because the offense is not lacking star power. Nobody can argue that. The names are there, the pedigree is there, the experience is there, but the output keeps shrinking instead of expanding. You watch drive after drive sputter out, and it feels like the group is stuck in this fog, unable to break out of the same predictable rhythm, even when the defense hands them another chance on a platter. The spark never fully catches. It is like the entire offensive unit is waiting for someone else to be the catalyst, but nobody steps up in that moment. And that becomes a real problem because the league does not slow down for anybody. The most frustrating part is that the defense keeps showing what championship-level football looks like while the offense moves in slow motion. Every time the defensive front crashes through the line, every time the secondary clamps down on the top threats, they send a message that this team is built to dominate. You can feel it in the way they swarm, the way they communicate, the way they trust each other. They look like a unit that knows exactly what its job is, but when the offense takes the field, everything becomes tense because you never know what version you are going to get. One play looks clean, then the next play looks like something that was thrown together without rhythm or urgency. And that inconsistency makes every game more stressful than it needs to be. The wild part is that the team should not even be in these nail-biting battles with the talent they have. These games should end early. You should feel the knockout punch long before the fourth quarter, but instead everything drags out. And the longer you leave the door open in this league, the more dangerous it becomes. One weird bounce, one tipped pass, one broken coverage, and everything can flip. That is why it feels like the offense has to wake up sooner rather than later. Because eventually you run into an opponent that will not let you survive this kind of slow start. And you can see the frustration building even within the players. You see it in the body language after a missed throw, in the reaction after a drop, in the disappointment after another stalled drive. You start noticing those little moments where guys look at each other like they are trying to figure out what is off. And the thing is, nobody is rooting against anybody. They all want to win. They all want to put up points. They all want to turn this into a complete performance. But wanting is not enough when execution keeps slipping through the cracks. Some of the issues stem from the design itself. The route combinations look predictable, almost like they came from a playbook that has not been updated since last season. Defenses are reading the patterns before the ball is even snapped. When you can sit on a slant or jump a go route before it develops, something is wrong with the creativity. And when defenses do not have to guess, they play faster, they play more aggressive, and they make life miserable for everyone on offense. That is exactly what is happening. Teams are not scared because they know they can anticipate what is coming. And when you combine that with drops, miscommunication, and shaky protection. Nothing feels smooth, but even with all the frustration, you cannot overlook the bright spots on the other side. The defensive front, man. They played like they were trying to make a statement. Every snap felt like someone was breaking through. The way they tipped passes at the line. The way they forced Detroit into awkward third downs. The way they pressured the quarterback into throwing early. It all created this avalanche effect that kept the opponent off balance. The run defense looked steady, the coverage tightened when it mattered, and even the younger players stepped up in huge moments. That is what you want to see from a team trying to secure the top seed. And speaking of that top seed, that is where the real pressure sits. Holding on to that spot changes everything. It means teams have to fly here, walk into this cold air, deal with this wind cutting across the field, adjust to the environment, and try to play their best football in conditions that drain you before the first quarter even ends. Nobody wants to deal with that, and that is why every win matters, even the ugly ones. Because as long as this team stays in front, the path to the conference championship runs through a stadium where the elements become another defender. The fans feel it too. Every game becomes this roller coaster of emotion where the defense gets everyone hyped and the offense brings everyone back down to earth. You start every possession hoping for something explosive, something creative, something that reminds you of what this group can be when everything is clicking. But then you get the same plays, the same sequences, the same missed opportunities, and the frustration builds again. People are not mad because the team is bad. They are mad because the team is better than what they are showing. That is the difference. There is also something to be said about how much the defensive leaders mean to this team right now. Their energy sets the tone. Their communication keeps everything tight. Their physicality puts fear into opponents. You can see them pulling the younger guys along, helping them develop faster, turning them into real impact players. And when you have that kind of growth happening on one side of the ball, it makes the offensive struggles feel even heavier. Because the gap between the two units should not be this big at this point in the season. Eventually, the offense is going to have to match that energy. They will need to stop leaning on the same safe calls, stop relying on individual talent to bail them out, and start playing with a sharper edge. They cannot keep letting defenses dictate the tempo. They cannot keep wasting the field position created by stop after stop. They cannot keep putting the defense back on the field after short drives that burn almost no time. That is not sustainable. Not when the opponents get tougher and the margin for error shrinks to nothing. FlyEaglesFly News. Family smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments and let's talk birds. Whispers have been swirling through the NFL landscape all week, but the latest murmur has erupted into something closer to a roar. According to internal chatter echoing from league circles, ESPN has confirmed that Commanders star wide receiver Terry McLaurin is on a surprising path toward joining the Philadelphia Eagles. Nothing is official yet, and the involved parties remain tight-lipped. But the rumor mill has rarely run this hot without smoke rising from somewhere. Inside team facilities, the sentiment is a mix of disbelief and anticipation. McLaurin, long regarded as the heart of Washington's offense and one of the league's most dependable targets, has built a reputation for consistency regardless of quarterback instability. The idea of him lining up in midnight green has sent a shockwave through both fan bases. Some insiders suggest that the Eagles have been monitoring his situation quietly for months, waiting for the perfect opening to make an aggressive move. Others insist this development materialized suddenly, sparked by behind-the-scenes conversations that escalated faster than anyone expected around the Eagles organization. There is growing excitement at the possibility of pairing McLaurin with an already explosive receiving corps. The mere thought of him stretching the field or working underneath alongside their current playmakers has analysts imagining a new level of offensive firepower. Meanwhile, the Commanders' camp is said to be bracing for the potential backlash, aware of what losing such a central figure could mean for their locker room identity. Still, every detail remains shrouded in speculation. Contract figures are being floated, potential compensation whispered, and anonymous sources keep dropping breadcrumbs without revealing the whole picture. Yet the buzz continues to intensify, gaining momentum with each passing hour. If this rumor solidifies into reality, it could mark one of the most surprising wide receiver shifts in recent memory. For now, all eyes remain locked on the unfolding drama, waiting to see whether these rumblings transform into a seismic NFL shakeup. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.